Oh, okay. I'll just take my Bluetooth ears out because it makes everything sound funny. All right, so basically, kind of catch me up on where you're at, and I did start the recording, so we have this. Um, but catch me up on where you're at as far as with the rental and so on and so forth. I want to make sure we kind of give you enough on rental operations that you have. I mean, you can always call me back later, but and I am doing Asset Mastermind now. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays is what I'm trying to do. But so kind of so you bought it. You're under control with it. You got your new leases in place.
I went there's four different tenants. Three of them, I found three of them, and they signed. I left the lease with them. I went back like a week later, and it's been signed. I've been hunting down this fourth tenant now for like 2 weeks. I still have yet to find this man.
Okay.
Um, so he's the only one that I still have to eventually try to catch.
All right. Now, we had a client. Um, we a year, and this goes years ago. And I'm just, I'll always start with horror stories. So we had a guy, and this was a building we'd owned for years. This was not a purchase. And we moved this guy in. He was a CDL driver for UPS, clean background, like everything you'd want. And he's paying his rent on time. And like 3 months later, I happen to go by the unit, and there's no window shade. So I peek in. There's no furniture. Okay. And we try to call him. There's no response. Now we're getting his money once a month, so we don't have a real reason to care. But we're like, well, this is strange. I don't have it. 2 weeks later, okay, fine, they're still moving. 2 months later, what the hell? So long story short, we go in, we send the maintenance guy in, we check the unit. Well, maintenance guy finds bushels of weed and guns and cash, and he told us all this. I later found out the maintenance guy is a lying piece of. So some of it may not be true. He calls a buddy on the police force. Turns out this guy was like stockpiling drugs in our apartment. This was a drop house, was what he was using us for. So whenever I have a client who's dark, I'm just saying, if he's dark and he's not living there and whatever, and I mean, obviously you can't take action too much. If you can't take too much action if he pays his rent and is living quietly, but I'd find a reason to go in that unit. I'd post the door for 24 hours notice. If he's never there, he's not going to tell you no. And I'd go in and just sniff around just to make sure, whatever. Maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's a traveling nurse. Maybe he's a lot of thousands of other wonderful things. But just try to get a handle on that. That's all I'm saying. Um, but yeah, so all right, so we get everybody on your new lease, and 3 out of 4 ain't bad for right now. Um,
Oh,
and
and I do have one problem, well, potential problem that I need to go there and look at. Um, and I didn't get into it with her about the whole thing because I was in a hurry that day, so I figured I'll just go back. But I had one rancher that told me that and she's the new one, right? The one that he had just put in.
yeah,
Um, so I know 2 apartments run off electric, 2 apartments run off gas. And she told me that she has not been able to locate a thermostat anywhere in her apartment. So she wanted to know like who was controlling her heat.
okay,
So, but when I bought it, like I knew the water situation because even the owner was like, we only have 2 water meters, therefore I can't charge them water because you're not allowed to do that, blah, blah, blah.
right, right.
So, I mean, I feel like if someone else was controlling her heat, he would have been upfront about that too because, I mean, he was upfront about the water.
What did you sell as disclosure say?
We mean,
Please tell me you signed a seller's disclosure presented by the owner before sale.
yeah.
Okay. Does the seller's disclosure say anything about who pays what utility? I mean, seller's disclosures. So, were you told they were 4 separately paid heat bills?
Yes, yeah. He said that they pay their own, electric, heat, gas, whatever. Like he's got it in their leases too, like if it's gas or if it's electric, and that they are responsible, they pay it. And then he's got that, he's the one who paid the water, so that's on there. So I don't know, maybe she's just overlooking it somehow. I don't know. I
Yeah.
need to go back out there and like go in the apartment and see. But yeah, I'm hoping that someone else isn't controlling it because I have no idea.
Yeah, and it truly might be worth, because from a physical standpoint, you don't know a lot of what you're looking for. So it truly might be worth hiring a handyman, a good handyman or a plumber or whatever to go out there and say, could you find, I mean, whatever. Obviously, everyone can look on the wall to find a thermostat, but just if it becomes more complicated than that, hey, listen, someone trace this down. Um, and also, if you got, now, is she electric heat or is she gas heat?
Um, shoot, I looked, but I can't remember now.
Because pretty much I've never heard of electric heat. I mean, it could exist. We're talking electric baseboard on the bottom of the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of those with thermostats outside the room. They're either thermostats on the unit or they're in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, is it possible you could have wired it controlled from another room? Yeah, you could have, but the whole point of electric heat is I'm not using that room. I can turn the heat off. So if she's an electric heat unit, I mean, if her now maybe her units don't get warm, maybe they have no power. I don't know, but electric heat, like I said, I've never heard of it heated from controlled from outside the unit. It could be. I mean, physically it could be done, but I've never heard of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
need to
so
learn and see.
I mean, that's definitely. That's definitely something you just have to go out there and look at and try to figure out the kind of way of doing it. Um, yeah. So so now operationally, remember your security deposits have to be in their own account. Now that is your security deposits and any other escrow money. If they gave you $10,000 when they moved in, and said, "Keep this for us because we just want a reserve account or whatever," that's their money. Escrow accounts are for things that are not your money. There is a loophole in the first year where you can use first year of their tenancy, not first year of your ownership, where you can kind of use the escrow money as your money, but for the most part, don't. Take it, stick it in a separate account, label it escrow account. That's where your securities go in. That's where your securities come out. That doesn't get used for tenant maintenance. That doesn't get used for vacancy. That doesn't get used for paying their current rent. That gets used for security deposit. There are ways if both parties sign off. Escrow can only be moved if both parties sign off and agree it's going to be moved for this purpose. Like if they're short on their rent and she's like, "Oh, take half my security." First of all, I have warnings for you on that being a bad idea, but because then you have half protection when they actually screw the place up. But then everybody has to sign. Hey, listen, I'm going to take 500 from your $1,000. You're signing, I'm signing. Therefore, you only have 5,500 left. If I were to do that, their rent's going up by $50 permanently, not till they pay it back, permanently. If you want me to use your security for something else, it's going to hurt you. Sorry. Um, so
And if someone signed a year lease already, because this is the new tenant, and of course he didn't tell me this, but she has a dog, and he didn't do a pet deposit. He didn't charge her a pet fee, just nothing at all. That can't be changed anyways,
you're
right?
stuck for the duration of the lease.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That sucks.
You're stuck for the duration of the lease. And here's the other place you're stuck. And this one you might now, if she signs and agrees to it, I don't, yeah, this is where I'm getting into lawyer world and I don't know, but I don't think there's anything that stops you from asking what I'm about to say, but you can't force it. Hey man, you know what? I know you didn't have a pet deposit on here, but really pets kind of make me nervous. Would you be willing to sign a pet deposit or a pet rent? Would you be willing to, I know it's not on your lease and you don't have to. I mean, as careful as you want to be, I really would like you to get renter's insurance, and I'd really like you to sign this saying you will get renter's insurance. Because yeah, the pet deposit's nice, but the dog bite liability is where we're at. The other thing you have in pets, and this is why, like, if we want to mix into our thing doing wholesale and other stuff, we can, but it's going to limit how much time I have because I have to kind of watch my own time value. There's other things in rentals, but like one of which is pets become complicated, dogs specifically, because I have a pit bull mix. I mean, he's not a full pit bull, but you look at him, you say pit bull. Well, insurance companies don't like pit bulls. Most insurance companies won't accept pit bulls. We have to turn away pit bull owners because our insurance company won't accept pit bulls. If she's got a pit bull and your insurance company doesn't allow pit bulls, you've now got a problem.
So
And
how?
there's,
Oh, I didn't.
yeah,
How did you find out your insurance wouldn't accept the pit bull?
because and again, this is because we've been doing this long enough that we've almost gotten screwed by it, but also this is part of our training as licensees and everything is that, and it's not just pit bulls, it's Rottweilers, there's a bunch of breeds, and it's stupid. Pit bulls used to be known as nanny dogs because they're so great with kids. They're a wonderful breed of dog. Their owners, in some cases, should be shot, but the dogs are fine. But there are breeds your insurance company is going to say, "Oh, you had a dog bite by a Labrador Retriever, we'll pay. You had a dog bite by a pit bull mix? Nope, not even for you. Too bad. You shouldn't have done that. And we're going to drop your insurance because you violated our insurance policy."
Oh wow.
Now, there is a dog bite insurance company out there that my wife has been contacted by, and we haven't tried it. We don't know. Um, that will cover when your insurance company doesn't, and we haven't tried it. We don't even want. I don't even really want to mention who it is because we don't know anything about it yet. That supposedly kind of fills that gap, but at the same time, so basically, dog breeds become an issue, and I don't know what you do in a situation where um, I don't know what you do in a situation where you have bought a building that has a pit bull and your insurance company doesn't accept pit bulls. I don't know that you have the right. I mean, I don't know where it would. Can they force you to Can you get rid of the tenant? Can they force you to get rid of the dog because the dog was pre-existing the lease? Would you want it? I don't know where that ends up, but I know there are insurance companies that say no to um, no to certain breeds of dogs. Um, and I would imagine if you went to her and you said, "Listen, man, would you please get rid of the dog kind of makes us nervous. Normally we charge a dog fee. We don't want to charge you that, but could you please could you sign this and say that you'll get a rental insurance policy within 30 days and name us on it?" And well, why? Well, because dogs can bite people and that can be bad. And that can be bad for us. Or dog bite insurance. Talk to your insurance agent about exactly what they want you to get or whatever. But, and we actually have people that have gotten their renter's insurance to move in, have dropped their renter's insurance or not paid it or whatever. We get the cancellation notice and we call. You're required to have it. You can get the renter's insurance or you can be in violation of your lease. And there, somewhere in there, you may need advice from a lawyer, like if you're changing the terms of the lease, because I think you can get, if they agree to it, I think you can change anything you want. But I've never tried. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Um, so that's so basically. And then yeah. So what other questions do you have?
The only other question. So the tenant that's MIA that I can't seem to. I mean, the other tenants told me that he is there, or oh, he just left or whatever. So he's there somewheres. But it is kind of odd because and I don't know if this matters, but he isn't the one who actually pays the rent. Apparently, his sister like mails the rent, I guess, a little bit in advance, so she just kind of covers for him. Does that make a difference on the
Well,
lease or anything, or no?
I mean, I always make sure. I mean, does it make a difference? I don't know if "make a difference" is really the phrase, but if somebody else is going to be responsible for the tenant, then I have a separate agreement, which we haven't done these in years, maybe over 2016, maybe 2018. That was right before COVID. We sold our. This happens a lot in student housing. Mom and dad are paying the rent. So we have a co-signer agreement or a financial responsibility document, which I'd have to look if I even still have one. But we have something that sister signs and says, "Hey, I am fully responsible for the rent," or "I am responsible as the backup person," or "I pay for John when I can, but I'm not guaranteeing I'll pay for John, but I'm, whatever." that makes it real clear this person understands. Now she's doing it, that's fine. And again, this is the I've never heard of that particular situation, but the concern or the theory might be um, that if she stops paying, now if he's on the lease, he's responsible. The fact that she's paying is fine. I don't think you need this document, but at the same time, if there's this phantom person out there that pays the rent that we don't know how to reach, and there's nothing in writing saying she's responsible. I mean, you're fine if you still have John signing the lease because you can prosecute John. But it might be helpful if you had some kind of communication with this person, especially because you have to let this person know where to send their rent next month. So
Yep, that makes sense.
so basically, I mean, having some kind of control over that would make me feel better. But as far as how far you want to go on a currently functional situation, I don't know. But at least knowing who she is and at least having some sort of a document that tells you that she's agreeing that this is what's going on, and she's taking, and also most importantly, she's taking some level of ownership of the situation. Is she simply doing it when she feels like it? Is she making her commitment that she's going to do it? What does that look like? Yeah. Anyway. Anything else?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So a few other things I wanted to cover real quick, and I'm just going to go through my punch list, and we can go deeper on this, or we can switch gears in terms of that going. But so I'm just pulling out my list here because I actually closed the window by mistake. All right, so operationally, you want to get your leases in place. You want to have your security deposit. You want to have all the tenants know how to reach you. You want to find out from your town if you have a rental inspection requirement. Did this property adhere to it? Yada yada. And how much is it? And you want to get that done right away. If there isn't one, you still want to do one. And meaning, and I'll email you this checklist real quick, which is just it's the obvious stuff: hot water, cold water, drains work, nothing leaks, windows function. Now, function doesn't just mean they open; they can't guillotine down. You open them, they have to stay. If they don't stay, you got to replace ropes or put friction items in, or do this or do that. You got to do a bunch of stuff. You want to make sure there's smoke detectors in every bedroom. Carbon monoxide, if it's not an all electric, if the whole building is all electric, you can get out of this. If the whole building is not, you got to do this. CO detectors in every common area. For instance, if it's a half double, a side by side half double, basement, living room, hallway upstairs, attic, all have to have CO detectors. In some communications, they have to talk to each other. You also want to make sure you have smokes in every bedroom, COs in every common area. They may need to interconnect. You can get wireless interconnectors on Amazon or whatever. That's fine. You need to make sure that everything functions. Doors functions, windows functions, outlets function, GFCI outlets anywhere within 6 feet of water. Sinks, laundry, any basement has to be GFCI. And like that, and every community has different rules, but fire extinguishers, usually, yes, you want a fire extinguisher. You want to make sure you have those kinds of things in place. You also want to walk through the unit now that you just bought it, take pictures. this is the current condition as you took it. Does it matter? No, because it really goes off the condition they took it when they moved in terms of what you can deduct from a security deposit. But you want to record, this is what I got the day I got it. You also want to um, ideally take an inspection checklist like the one I just sent you, or the one I'm sending you now, I should say. Take an inspection checklist and you have the tenant sign off. Hey, listen, as of the time I moved in, the place was beautiful and freshly painted. As of today, it's beautiful, but kind of showing signs of age, but nothing really broken. And then when they move out, okay, this is broken, that's broken, that's broken, that's broken. So everyone agrees when they move in, when they move out, here's the change. Um, so you want to go through that. You want to make sure that um, you want to make sure the town is okay with whatever it is you're um, to make sure that if the town needs a certification, that you get the certification and you maintain that. Usually it's every 2 years, whatever. You want to make sure that that's you
Who
want,
do
you want to make sure you have
who do you call for that? Do you just call the
the town code enforcement office
okay.
or whatever. I mean, depends on how small of a town it is, and they may not have one. If they don't have one, do it, record it, because one of the biggest liability, and in your lease should be that the smoke detectors are the tenant's responsibility. That will not save you. That will not prevent you from having problems. But you want to, you at least want to know that. Like in towns where I don't have rental inspections, I think it's one town for me in our area that doesn't do. I go through with a video recorder and I record all the smoke detectors. I record the COs. I test, push the button, hear them beep, annoy the crap out of everybody, whatever. I record the entire room. There's no holes in the floor. There's no wrinkles in the carpet. There's no whatever. Obviously, you turn on the water and you check underneath the sink to show that it's not leaking. You put your hand under there to say warm, cold, whatever. Oddly enough, warm and cold coming out of the correct sides is very important. And I used to laugh at that. But the logic is everyone knows hot is on the left. So if I turn cold on, I walk away, I grab a glass, I come back, I burn myself. If I turn right on, is the landlord liable? I don't know, but is that what anyone would have expected? No. So you want to make sure those things are whatever that you're on top of those things. You want to make sure that this is also your chance to see how they live. And I try to do these every 6 months, which I almost never actually get around to doing, because I want to see how they live. I want to see, are they keeping my place clean? I try to do when I can, and I don't have control of this because I don't do my own maintenance. But if I have a maintenance call from a questionable tenant, I'm doing that maintenance call as early in the morning as I can. Because if I walk in, and this happens more often than I care to think about, and there's a pan of chicken on the stove at 8 in the morning, I don't think broiled chicken was anyone's breakfast. So that broiled chicken was sitting there from last night. That broiled chicken was rat food or rat attractant. I usually go through my apartments with a pest control expert before we rent them, or at least I do something. So, and I make pest control the problem with it. If I do a pest control with a professional, I make pest control their problem in the lease. Now, in reality, it's still your problem as far as the city. The important thing to remember is the city doesn't care what you tell the tenant is their problem in the lease. The city will never go after the tenant. The city will go after you. If you say, no trash in the yard, and the tenant leaves trash in the yard, which this happens more often than I care to think about. The city doesn't call the tenant. The city doesn't care what the tenant. The city calls or sends you a letter or fines you. The city does not care. They care who your tenant is for records purposes. They don't care who your tenant is for any kind of liability purposes. You clean up the yard. You piss with your tenant. I have pest control is not my problem in the lease. The city official says, well, if you have pests, that's a habitability issue and your unit is no longer habitable. You fix it. You can sue your tenant for whatever you want. You can evict them. You can do whatever you want. but you're responsible to us to keep your property pest free. So remember, the buck never stops as far as the city is concerned with the tenant. You also want to do this anyway. You want to go down and meet those code officers, or at least talk to them on the phone, because I know it's travel for you, and give them your phone number. Say, listen, I just took over this property. If there's anything you need, here's my number, yada, 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 and get them to know that you're legit. And what I do is I have the waiver of notice to quit in all my leases. Well, Kelly does. I don't do it anymore. And day 3, day 5, day 3, they get a text message. Hey, where's my rent? Day 5, another text message. Where's my rent? Day 6, they get a phone call. If we haven't made a payment plan with some kind of plan by like day 7 or day 8, we're filing in court. I'm not waiting. I don't do this. Now, if there's a song and dance and we get somewhere, all right, fine. We have one woman who we made these calls to. She's like, I dropped off a money order to your office, and here's a picture of the money order. Now, I've searched my office, I've searched my car, I've searched everything. I don't have signs of a money order. But you know what? Cleaning lady might have picked it up. Whatever. Okay, fine. So I said, well, great. You order a return of that money order and you get us the money. Well, we're not going to hold it against you for this month. We're going to trust that you bought a money order. You're telling us it was for this and whatever, fine. Refund the money order and get us the money. So we're not going to hold it against her, but if she doesn't refund the money order and get us the money, we're going to assume she bought a money order, showed us a receipt of it, but didn't actually deliver the money order. So we don't let people slide. We had somebody on, for whatever reason, Kelly waited till the 2nd or 3rd week of the month before she kind of filed with this guy. And he got nasty with her. He was like, I can't believe it's all about the money with you, and it's only 2 weeks late. And Kelly's like, only 2 weeks? How about, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, for giving me 2 weeks. I understand that my job is to pay the rent. It is about the money because that's literally what rent is. But he was totally indignant. They're like, no, usually you wouldn't get this much. I've been in court in landlord's world 6 months, a year, 2 years worth of money. What the hell are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to stay on the tenants. You want to stay on top of these things. Yeah. So anyway, so that's basically so I mean, as far as property management, the other thing is you want to make sure that you're assuming you're self-managing, which sounds like you are. You want to have a good maintenance person, very quick response, very local. That if fire, flood, or blood, there's a leak, there's a fire department call to the building, there's something, there is someone, because probably your town has a 20-mile radius. You're supposed to have a manager within 20 miles. They might not bust you on that, and that'd be a licensed broker, property manager, what they're looking for there. They might not bust you on that, but God forbid if there was, a running water situation or a fire or whatever, and you couldn't get somebody out there within a reasonable period of time, then there's going to be a problem. Think about it. If you had a main water pipe break and, oh yeah, I'll be there in 3 hours after 5 o'clock. How much freaking water have you run through your meter at that point? How much damage to the building at that point? So you're definitely looking at, needing to have a maintenance person local, interview them, make sure they're good, make sure they're reputable, whatever. You're going to need someone to answer those calls. And you're going to need to become a little bit comfortable, which is something we can talk about maybe being involved with too, with what's a necessary repair and what's not. We have a woman who's paying $620 for a 3-bedroom apartment, which out here is a $1,300 a month value. And for a lot of reasons, the owner of the building will take her out. Whatever. So she's still there. And she had really some rotten floors because of pre-existing conditions, and we patched the floors. We took out the rotten parts and repaired them. And she's like, "Well, now my floors are ugly. I want new flooring." When I went to the owner, he's like, "We'll give her new flooring." I said, "Vinny, I don't think we should." I said, "The floors are safe. She's paying half the rent she should be. You're going to spend $5,000, $3,000, $5,000 in flooring, and you're not making a return. You're not making what you should on that apartment." I'm not saying she's like, "Well, she's a nice person." She's a nice person, yes, but is she worth it? So you make repairs that are necessary. We have this one woman who moved in, beautiful apartment, completely renovated, refinished the floors, the whole bit. Every week, it's I won't use her real name, but it's naughty as nags of the week, Kelly calls it. Every week she's fighting, and with these are things that are not wrong. She's not wrong to say they're not perfect, but we're talking about perfect versus acceptable, perfect versus just not even that, perfect versus correct. It's a very high quality apartment, but she's like, "Well, I see that a piece of the crown molding is chipped." Okay, who gives a crap? And it was chipped when you moved in. When they moved in, they signed off. Property is in a habitable, acceptable condition, and I'm okay with its current condition. I've got videos of where it is. So boom. So you want to work with that situation of that. So you want to manage their expectations, and you could be honest with them. We told this woman, listen, when we get your rent to market rent, we will refloor the apartment. And she's like, "Well, I can't afford market rent." And we said, "Okay, we understand that. Then we have a problem because the money we're going to invest, and you're going to be straight with people." And the other thing is, when we take over a building, you sit down with your tenants who aren't paying enough, when their lease is up or when they're whatever. And I'd be careful with this conversation this time of the year. But and say, "Listen, market rent for your I know you've been paying month to month $500 a month. Market rent for your apartment is $950. Well, I can't afford $950. Okay. Well, what do you think is fair? Because it's not really a great place for me to be making half what I should be making. I could move you out, paint the apartment, put somebody else in here for twice the money. That isn't really fair to me that I should lose, be at a disadvantage. But I also don't want to kick you out of your home. I'd like to find a solution where, and sometimes say, "Oh, well, if you do this, then I can do that." Okay, that's one answer. Or what could you do right now? Is the other answer. And then if whatever they want, if they want the rent to go up, they got to prove they can afford the rent to go up. Do they have 3 times the income? So you're basically making them reapply for their own apartment. But by having listen, rents have gone up stupid for the last 3 years, and that you're paying way under market, and we're not asking you to pay what a new tenant would pay. But we also can't continue to be at this huge of a disadvantage. What do you suggest? And sometimes you are shocked by what they would suggest.
But what if, say you have a tenant and they're under like a year lease at a certain price.
You're stuck.
Okay, so really you just need to, because I'm talking about like cosmetic updates and stuff. So yeah, like you just better off wait until after that year's up.
I mean, it depends how far off. I mean, you cannot change the what do you call it? You can't change the agreement unless they agree to change the agreement. You can't change the agreement while they're sitting there. You can't simply wake up and say, "No, I'm not going to do it."
But if you had someone that was like, "I'm willing to pay a little bit more if you'll come in and like redo these floors,"
that's
then
fine.
Okay, that's
All day long. Yeah, exactly. And you can do that. Say, "Listen, you know what? We'll agree to do this." And obviously you want to hedge your bets because you want to say, "Okay, well, if you agree to redo these floors, I'll agree to raise my rent to this." Okay, great. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to raise your rent as of, course, you've got the whole 30-day notice thing, whatever. We're going to raise your rent as of December 1st. Or if they'll agree, we'll do it as of November 1st, whatever. But we're going to raise your rent I want to see you make that. First of all, I want you to verify you have the income. You're going to apply to me like you were a tenant for that rent. I want to see your pay stubs. I want to know you can afford. Are you making 3 times the rent? But if you are, am I going to repair the unit and hope you pay your increased rent? Are you going to pay your increased rent for 1 month and then I'm going to repair the unit? You work out those details, and you kind of go through it with them. You can kind of walk you kind of walk through those details. Obviously, I want them to pay before I give them flooring. They're probably going to want flooring before I make them pay. You then got to kind of read the person and say, do I feel safe doing this? But yes, we do that kind of stuff all the time, where we give people a chance and we improve their apartment and yada yada yada. And also along with that is then pretty much a new agreement saying my rent is 1,000 now, but my rent is 1,000, but what am I saying? My rent is 1,000, but my security deposit is still only 500 or something like that. Make sure it all spells out in there what it is that you're agreeing to, basically.
Gotcha.
That everyone absolutely knows what their purpose is, and it all comes down to making sure everything is very clear, everything is very whatever. Um, you know, that's where you want to make sure that no one has a doubt as to what they're doing. Yeah, so basically, yeah, and obviously along with that is then you have to hold up your end of the bargain. If you say, hey, I'm going to do this within 60 days, you better do that within 60 days. You know, anything they're willing to change for, that's fine. Any other questions?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, all right. So basically, the other thing you're going to want to do with these tenants is make sure you get next of kin or emergency contacts. Pennsylvania has a strange law that I don't think has ever been changed. That tenant turns up dead in the apartment, and the coroner does not want to take possession. Coroner does not have to take possession unless there's a crime. If you don't know who's going to take possession and take control, guess who owns that body? You do.
Oh wow.
And and also what happens if you show up and the tenant's non-responsive, or EMS shows up and the tenant's non-responsive. So you want to know that stuff. You want to know that kind of thing. You want to know, and you want to make sure. And then we talked about foreign wiring, foreign utilities, especially because you have electric heat units. You want to literally know whether anything outside that unit is powered off that unit's electric bill. And if it is, you want to change that. Because I had an electric heat unit where it was 3 electric heat units. It was a triple decker stacked. And the common hallway was apparently running off apartment 1. We didn't know this at the time. This is when we were an unlicensed management company. We just never thought to ask the question. Well, she ran up a maybe it was a $12,000 electric bill. It was stupid huge. And then when the electric company called up and said, ma'am, we're cutting you off. They go, oh, no, you're not. It's foreign wiring. It's Foreign Services Act. My landlord has the electric for the hallway running off of my bill, and that's not legal. PPL comes out and inspects, finds out, yep, that's actually true. Landlord has to pay the $12,000. And the guy's like, you know what, I'll give you a break. Pay $4,000. Well, doesn't sound like much of a break to me, but okay. And so you want to make sure that nothing outside of the unit, no utility the unit pays for, is controlled or is available outside the unit and not controlled from within inside the unit. An easy way to picture that is we have a duplex of our own, 2 separate electrics. Well, the basement is where both panels are. So the basement, both tenants use. So we just ran 2 separate light strings in the basement, and we have wireless switches in them. And the wireless switch for second floor is in second floor's apartment. It's not in the basement. They have to turn it off and on from their apartment and then go down to the basement. Because we can't give first floor the opportunity to turn on the LED lights in the basement. And they don't care if it's one bulb, they don't care if it's an outdoor outlet, they don't care if it's a sprinkler plug. They don't care what it is. If it's paid for by the tenant and it's controlled, if it's not controlled from within the locked confines of the apartment, it's a violation. Technically, those outlets you have below, and I actually asked the PP&L guy this. I said, okay, so code requires I have an outlet below every electrical panel for utility of the person servicing the electrical panel. He said, yes. Code requires that I have a light bulb over every electrical panel for servicing utility, whatever. Yes. Okay. Which do I pick? Do I violate Foreign Services Act by not having those outside the unit? Or do I violate the code? And he looked at me, he's like, pick one. He's like, but picking us is going to be more expensive. He's like, for me, I'm taking out those. I'm having the utility outlet in there for inspections, and I'm taking it out as soon as the inspection's over. Meaning the initial code inspection. So you want to navigate that. You want to be ready on navigating that. You want to be ready on monitoring changes in law, and you want to be ready on responsiveness to your code officers. Now, there's a lot more. Okay, so the last thing is, and there's far more to this that I want to cover, but I know you want to get to other stuff. Is your bookkeeping. Lock down your bookkeeping. Be tracking every communication with your tenants. Until we got shut down by Google Voice, we had a Google Voice. We now pay for a Ring Central. Everything was text. We have a portal. We have a Pay Near Me. Pay Near Me is a service where they can drop their rent off at any CVS, Walgreens, yada, 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 and they pay a small service fee. And we don't accept cash. We don't pick up cash. We don't deal with cash. We used to until this lady, we were letting people drop stuff off the office. I'm like, no, we're not doing it anymore. You can send it to us through the portal. You can mail us a check, which we actually charge for because we don't want to deal with checks. Or you can use Pay Near Me. We don't care. We really want you on the portal, or we want you using Pay Near Me because Pay Near Me goes through our portal. We have a software. We pay for Buildium. It's a high-end enterprise level software. There are softwares for consumer, for smaller landlords. But you want a QuickBooks or a spreadsheet, or you want to track all that. You want to track all of your expenses, every dollar you spend on the building, every time you make a repair. You want to understand, and this is why I'm kind of flying through the topics that we could cover if we did the long form. You want to understand what is a CapEx expense, capital expenditure, depreciated over many years, versus what's a repair. A water heater sounds to me like a repair because it was broken, I fixed it. By the IRS, a water heater is a capital expenditure amortized over 7 years, I think. So instead of writing off that $1,000, $2,000 this year, I write it off over 7 years. A good landlord accountant knows how to make everything, knows where the line is, knows how far you can push it. You need a good CPA. You need a good accountant that understands Pennsylvania law, your home state law, and real estate investing, specifically landlording. If they don't understand these things, then they're not. Then you can use them for your accountant, but they may not be the accountant for this. You may want a different accountant. You want to have all of your contractors. You want W-9s on them, which is the W-9 triggers the 1099. The W-9 is the independent contractor version of a tax form. Meaning you have to get a copy of their ID. You have to get a copy of this. You want to have an independent contractor agreement with them. Now, if you hire Larry's Plumbing and Heating LLC, obviously that's a little different, but I still make them do this, but you don't have to with them. I'm talking about Chuck in the truck. I'm talking about your basic handy person. You want to have a waiver of liability with them. You want to have an independent contractor agreement with them. You want to have a waiver of workers' comp statement from them. You want to have all that paperwork, and you want a picture of their ID because we've had guys fill out W-9s with fake information, and the IRS tried to chase us for the taxes.
Oh
And we said,
gosh.
here's the W-9. The IRS said, well, that's funny. That address says, Bend Me Over Lane on, Leave Me Alone Boulevard. And we don't believe he actually lives there. Can you prove that? No, I can't. Well, then guess what? This is fraud. Now, they've never actually come after us for money. We've talked our way out of it. But you want to be able to say, well, listen, and you got to be very careful of paying people in cash. Cash over $600, yada, yada, yada. And people say all the time, oh, well, can you pay me in cash? Well, yeah, I'm going to pay you 40% less in cash. Why? Because if the IRS catches me, I'm going to pay the 40% in tax. Well, my tax rate is only 10%. I said, great, then just take the money and pay the 10%. You want me to pay you in cash? I'm cutting 40 out because that's my tax rate. Well, no one will ever catch you. I said, oh, probably not. But if they do, and you want to make sure that any contractor that works for you in that agreement is a waiver of lien, that they can't file a lien against you. Because I have a contractor, I accidentally texted this guy yesterday, and he's like, oh, you still owe me $700 from 12 years ago. And I look back at my notes, I'm like, well, yeah, this guy's a prick. I should have sued him, let alone simply not paid him. And he's like, I might file a lien against you. I said, sorry, file a lien if you want. Well, I'll go to court. I got no problem with it. I said, but first of all, we have a waiver of lien. And second of all, here are the screenshots of all the things you did wrong on the job. And you told me you didn't want to come back and fix them. So you want to have all of your paperwork as lock solid as you can. You want to have all of your stuff as lock solid as you can. The other thing you want to figure out is what happens, and maybe you don't have an answer. For years we did. I had a Google Voice number that was our maintenance line, our maintenance emergency line. And when that thing rang my phone, it was literally a World War II fire siren. And 24/7, that was the only number on my phone that, besides my mother and my sisters, that would ring 24/7. Because if there was a fire, flood, or blood incident overnight, and believe me, tenants don't always call for fire, flood, or blood, so it kind of sucks sometimes. That woke me up. Or what is your plan when you go out of town, or when you're not available, or when you're this, or when you're that? Does it happen often that there's an emergency? No. But there was one time we owned a building about 3 months, and a kid on the second floor calls us at dark 30, like it must have been 4 a.m. Oh my God, the roof caved in, and I'm getting rained on in my bed. And I'm like, oh, the roof caved in. Oh, fuck, what the hell? And then I'm like, you're on the second floor, dude. And he's like, yeah, so the roof caved in. I said, well, except the second floor has a third floor above it, and then a roof. He's like, I don't know. It turned out a water pipe broke right over his bed. A 2-inch water pipe, whatever. So, like, that was fire, flood, or blood. I had to get my butt up. First, at the time I was the closest responder, get my butt up, get down there, shut the water off, yada, 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 go through the process, whatever, deal with it. Then we were going to Vegas the next month. Okay, who's doing that job while I'm in Vegas? Who's available while the plane's and I take it further than most. While the plane's in the air. Well, what are the chances of something happening? Well, okay, but what if it does? Who am I? And that's why we use it for the longest time. We used a Google Voice number where we could forward that Google Voice number to somebody. So have that stuff thought through, basically. Have those plans ready. Anyway, so there's a lot more to property management, that we could cover. Now, you mentioned wholesaling, and what else were interested in learning about?
Um, with the wholesaling, I get what you were saying. Like, it probably would be like a whole another course and all
Yeah.
that. But just for wholesaling, I would just like a brief overview of what it is, so I would know whether or not I would be interested in the other course. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So basically, so wholesaling. And wholesaling is okay. So licensed agent is. Since you're laid off, so in January, February, wholesaling of 0 to 5 units in Pennsylvania becomes. You have to be a licensee working under a broker. So you would get your license. You'd bring your license under my firm, and that would allow you to do that level of wholesaling. You're wholesaling commercial, no one cares. Wholesaling residential, they care. And wholesaling residential, lots of other things change with this law. So becoming licensed is also not a bad idea because you can list a property that doesn't wholesale. I have a property in Hazleton right now. We had a wholesale deal agreed to with the parties. Then the brother got his in a bunch, and now he wants to list it for twice what we ever think we can list it for. And I told him, I said, listen, I'll list it for your number, but you're giving me a billboard in front of your property because no one's ever going to freaking buy it at that price. You just I don't know where you. Well, Zillow says, oh my God, please, Zillow means nothing. But basically, wholesaling is, and this goes for wholesaling of anything. You can wholesale private money. Right now, I can pay you 30%. You can wholesale. I can pay you 30% of the thing. You can wholesale my courses. Someone buys one of my courses. I'll pay you 30%. Or if you call me up and say, "Hey, I got a guy for your $600 course," I don't care what you charge him. I get my $600. Wholesaling is putting anything under contract with the actual owner, and then selling it before you buy it for more money. For example, I put under contract a mobile home, like an actual trailer, which I don't love them, but whatever, for $8,000. Great, sign the contract. Now I'm marketing it for $20,000. I've got people interested for $20,000. So great, my profits. Well, me and my partner, our profit is $12,000 if this guy actually buys it. That's wholesaling. You're the middleman. You're not an agent because you've entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the seller that has certain contingencies, time and this and that and the other thing. That. You've got a purchase and sale agreement with the seller. You are, sorry, just stop for a second. You are committing unless and this is where people partner with me on. And what I do on wholesaling is you're committing to purchase the property under certain circumstances. If those circumstances come true, you're buying the property. Then you are having a certain period of time to inspect the property, which really means bring buyers. And then you have, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks to decide if you're going to buy the property. And then 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to either buy the property or get out of the deal, basically. And during those 2 or 3 weeks is when you find yourself your buyers. So that's wholesaling kind of in a nutshell. There's a lot of legalities to it. So you're wholesaling based on an assignment contract, or what people use as novation. Same thing. Assignment meaning hunting for homes and or assigns is buying this property, which means at the day of closing, that name on the deed can change, but nothing else in the contract can change. I can assign my rights over to somebody else to close on the deal. I have the right to assign that, and I have the right to make a fee on that assignment. There are situations where double transfer tax comes into effect. There are situations where lots of other things come into effect. It's at its heart, it can be simple, but there are complications. And at the end of the day, you're needing to get a property less than market value. I have a guy right now calling who sent me a lead. He's like, seller's got a double in Reno Lane, blah, blah, blah. And, he has it on Facebook Marketplace for 160, but I think he'll take 150. I said, don't bother. He's like, what do you mean? I said, if the world's seen it at 160, the buyers at 150 have already made their offer. So if we buy it at 150, who are we selling it to? So wholesaling is a trick of finding property that isn't yet marketed. You want to find the guy who responds to your ad. You want to find the guy that you cold call. You want to find the guy or woman or whatever that hasn't yet promoted their property and has a motivation. Why are they selling it below market value? Because, if they're like, you know what, make me sell it. The minute someone says, make me sell it, I say, you know what? A wholesaler can't make you sell it because I'm paying you less than you could list it for. Well, then why do I need you? I said, well, then let's talk to me about it as an agent, as a broker. I need the person who says, my life sucks because I have this. I want X out of it. I will settle for Y out of it, and Steve can sell it for some multiple of X or Y. And they go into it understanding that they're taking a hit because you're making it fast and easy. I do listings for 6 months, a year. I do wholesale contracts for 2 to 4 weeks. So they're going to know in 2 or 4 weeks if we're buying the house. Now, how does that compare to real estate agent? Real simple. Real estate agent is a consignment agreement. It's like the clothing consignment shop. I'm going to give you my clothing. I'm going to give you my car, and the car dealer, the used car dealer, is going to make an pre-agreed number on the purchase. So I'm selling a house for a guy for $100,000. The commission is 6%. So great. At closing, he gets 94. I get 6. Maybe there's another agent involved because it's a little more complicated, but basically that. So I'm going to make 3 to 6% as a real estate agent on the deal. As a wholesaler, I got this trailer for $8,000. I'm selling it for 20. Well, as a real estate agent, I probably have a $4,000 commission on that. So I'm making 12 or I'm making 4. It can be easier to sell it as a real estate agent because other realtors are going to help me sell it, yada yada. But that's kind of the wholesaling in a nutshell.
And as a wholesaler, the wholesaler would get paid after the property is sold, right?
Everybody always gets paid at closing. The realtor gets paid at closing. Everybody always gets paid at closing.
Gotcha.
Okay, I shouldn't say always. I guess there are certain circumstances, but for the most part, everybody always gets paid at closing. And basically, now there are dishonest wholesalers that will take deposits in hand from buyers. I don't do that. I do, you put your deposit in with an escrow company, and when the escrow company says all title is clear, yada, 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 then you get paid. Everybody gets paid. Title company says wholesaler, here's your money, da 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 da. Buyer gets theirs, seller gets theirs. Everybody does their money party. And what I do with my wholesale agreements, with my wholesale students. Now I do have a free JV program where you bring a deal in, we'll work that deal together. You bring a seller. As soon as you talk to somebody who says, yeah, I'm willing to talk about selling my house, get them on the phone with me and I'll walk you through the process, whatever. And I'll split those with you. Either you get a third or you get half, depending on how involved you are in the deal. It's actually 20, 30. It's actually 20, a third, or half. 20 if you just give me a name and number, a third if you're a little more involved, and half if you stay involved the whole way. And there's no upfront fee for that. You just got to find it. I do give very minimal training on how to find the deal. We have once a week meetings, whatever, where we give a little bit of guidance, but that's more, go teach yourself how to fish. If you take a paid course, and you make a deal, if we get to closing, out of our first 3 closings, I will pay you back all of the course fees you paid me. Like you paid me whatever, $900 for this one, and you pay another whatever for the wholesale one. I'm going to owe you, let's say it's 9 and 9. I'm going to owe you $1,800 out of my profit from our first 3 deals. Like if you're my wholesale student, we're making 50-50 profit. We're splitting everything half and half. And out of my half, I'm going to pay you back all the course fee you ever paid me for any course you took. You take other courses, I then owe you back more out of closings. So I do because I don't want, I want your $900 for the course, but on a long term, I want the 9,000, 90,000 we might make together. My partner Ryan was my student. I charged him $750 for at the time. My comprehensive, learn everything real estate was $750. Commercial, residential, rental, whatever. It's now $4,000 because I've gotten a lot deeper on it. But we've made probably each taken home probably maybe a little over $250,000 each of us over the last 4 years of working together. So he made his $750 back in the first deal, and then ever since then we've just 50-50 all the money. And obviously I've done a lot better. I'm happy to pay you back, no problem, because I don't want the 700 or 4,000 or whatever as much as I want the 50,000 we can make. And wholesale spreads are very often 5, 10, 15, $20,000. If you're wholesaling strip malls, strip clubs, self-storage, mobile home parks, one wholesale fee alone could be $250,000. So, I mean, wholesale can be very, very, very lucrative. Wholesale can be done nationwide regardless of your license. Whereas,
Now that
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
the other thing I wanted to know about was like when you go to purchase, whether it's a multi-unit, a single family, like, but when you just go to purchase in general, like, what are the different options for purchasing? Like, I know, like, you can use your 401k. I know you can pull a HELOC out on the home you own, and you can use that. And then I know there's private money lenders. You can go that route. But just
Yep.
kind of like an overview of, like, yeah, like the different.
Yeah, which and you'll see very quickly why this is its own. Again, in the comprehensive, these and more are included. I teach self storage. I teach mobile home parks. I teach yada yada yada. The only thing I don't really teach is strip clubs because that's a whole different business. But and also I leave that to my business partner who runs 20 of them in New York. But anyway, but really, there's every which way. So there's on a very basic level of lender types. We'll talk about that first. You've got banks, traditional, Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life back in the day, bank, credit union, don't care, FDIC or similar insured, local or, Bank of America isn't really local, but whatever, institutional banks. And they're going to have a very narrow appetite. They're going to be looking at the long-term money. They're not going to want to hear the word flip because they're basing their income off 8% a year for the next 20 years. That's what they're looking at. Whereas, and they're looking at a lot of give me your blood, give me your DNA, give me your firstborn, let me go up your back. And they're very investigatory about the person as well as about the property. I am finally approved, although I was verbally approved in June. I'm finally approved on this lender because I finally yelled at them and said, listen, you're going to give me an approval today or I'm going elsewhere. It took them 4 months to reapprove a loan that I was already approved for because the timing just expired. It took them 4 months of up your butt. Give me new leases. Give me this. Give me that. They're very picky. Whatever.
Wow.
There's asset-based lenders, what are called hard money lenders, very often, or asset-based lenders, DSCR lenders, debt service coverage ratio, and they're glancing at you personally. Do you have a pulse? Do you have a reasonable credit score? Are you someone I wouldn't hate being in business with? Now let's talk about the building. Because yes, the banks almost always have a personal guarantee, unless they're loaning to a retirement fund, whole different conversation, that's non-recourse. But an asset-based lender looks at the asset. They look at my mortgage payment's $1,000 after costs and maintenance vacancy management pad. You need to make at least $1,200 in order to make 1.2 DSCR. Okay, it makes 1.2 DSCR. This person is not the most horrible person we've ever met in the world. They've got reasonable experience. Yes, and the place appraises. Yes, we'll do the loan. So that's another huge category, and that is usually a lending institution still. And there are brokers for both. So there's always a broker that will go to several banks. There's always, banks less so like brokers. It's usually asset based. It'll have a broker. Brokers go to several different institutions. Like I'm becoming a broker in DSCR lending. I'm probably going to use Joe Scarice as my main lending with Lendmark, but I'll probably broker it out to several people. Brokers are sort of like insurance brokers. They work with a bunch of different companies. Then you have hard money companies, asset-based lending, Able funding or Able funding. I forget. I work with Bennett a lot. Anyway, those guys. And they are usually working with what are called family corporations, which are basically rich people playing with money. And that's a corporation involved in, and so your bank might charge you 7%. Your asset-based company might charge you 7.5% to 10% for the same long-term rental deal. Asset-based companies are also okay with flips. They'll usually do 80 or 90%, and then 100% of rehab, yada yada, maybe more like 12%. But asset-based companies are okay with flips because they'll just jack the rate up. The other thing that's different very often in asset-based is you sign, other than banks, everybody else has usually the rule of the day. If you pay me off the day after you sign the agreement, you still owe me the whole interest. You borrow 100,000 from me today, you pay me off tomorrow, you still owe me 12% interest. I only have the money a day, so I booked it out for being out for a year. It's not my fault you booked it out only being out for a day. You only had it out for a day. I couldn't take it away from you for a year, and because you wanted to pay me back tomorrow, I can't do that. Banks can do that. So asset based, and then hard money takes it up a notch a little bit. It's kind of like asset based, where they're looking even less at you. They're looking totally at almost totally at your property. And private is like you're borrowing from me personally. What are Steve's rules? Now, usury is still a factor, whether or not there's usury in the state of whatever you're in, and limits on interest and stuff. But basically, you start with the banks, and they're the most anal about underwriting and collections and whatever. And private guys, he's passed away now, but I had a private lender. Okay, he did a little bit of looking in. Like, we'd known each other for a few years, so it was very little looking into. I borrowed the first thing for him. He asked me like 10 questions and just sent me a check. And then after that, I got to the point where I simply call him. I would simply call him and say, "Guy, I need 60,000 for this deal." He'd just, "Okay, great. Okay, Steve, I already sent the wire." He'd send me a little thing to say 12%, whatever I was paying him, fine. Just send the wire. Like, private money is literally you're borrowing from Joe. And you're paying more because it's more risk and it's more convenience. That's why you're paying more. Then there's seller finance, which can be full seller finance, partial seller finance, what I call 80-20 holdback, meaning the bank puts up 80 and the seller's putting up 20, so $100,000 purchase. Bank is bringing 80 to the table, seller is taking the mortgage for 20, always second to the bank. Banks will never sit second chair to a seller. The other way around, it has to be the way it goes. Then there's Gator funding, which is, oh crap, my flip ran over and I need another 10,000 now, and someone snaps that up, and sometimes you're going to pay up to a third on that. They don't call it a percentage rate, they call it a fee, because they can't call it a percentage because that would be illegal, but calling it a fee makes it totally fine. So there's that. Then there's borrowing from your line of equity or your equity on your other properties or whatever. And there are lenders that'll do that. That's actually the loan that I've been waiting for a few months to get reinitialized, is a line of credit against my properties, literally. So there's that. Then there's what I call pawn shop lending. There isn't really a name for this, but there are companies that have absurdly high interest rates. And frankly, they're predatory. They want you to fail because they want your property more than they want the money. But if you're in a situation where no one else will help you, great. There is, I don't know the name of it, but basically, I rep for a company that basically does zero interest credit cards. You pay a certain fee up front, they'll get you 100,000 in credit cards, 0% for a year, yada, yada, yada. There's that. There's a bunch of that's where creative financing gets crazy. There's having equity partners and credit partners involved in a deal. There's obviously private money. There's syndication, which is getting a bunch of people into a purchase. There's borrowing from your 401k. There's being able, because you're not now at a W-2 job, you can put your 401k into a self-directed 401k. You can borrow half of that back for your own investments, and you can do something else with the other half. So there's a lot of different slices to the pie. Literally, that's why this can get deep, but it all depends what the situation is. There's also lenders that you can fudge the numbers. You can say, I'm buying a property now for or putting under contract. I may not buy it, I'm not sure, for $500,000, and we're writing the contract at $750,000, and we're doing. It's a little edgy, and my attorney has to make sure this is not a violation because of my license. But we're writing it at $750,000. The seller is giving me a $250,000 second position mortgage, which he's already agreed to forgive in writing, agreed to forgive the day after we close on the property. So the bank brings 500 to the deal. On paper, I'm bringing 250, but the 250 vaporizes the next day. So I'm not actually having to bring any property. So there's 1,000 different creative methods of blending all of this. But the more creative you get, sometimes the more expensive. You know, your initial. Now, the one thing you never do in any kind of lending, you may pay an appraisal fee. You may pay something stupid like a couple $100 in doc prep fee, but you never pay anything else until the loan is funded. You don't pay anyone's, no service fee until the loan is funded. I'm just checking to make sure my daughter didn't text me anything. Okay, no, we're fine. Um, just because it's around her sports time, I want to make sure she wasn't missing. Yeah, so I mean, again, the financing conversation is hugely complicated. I mean, that's kind of like the quick answer. Um, and I'm a broker for many of them. I'm on a couple weekly podcasts, and yada yada yada. There is, then of course, if you're in different categories, if you're in the category of self storage, you're in the category of mobile home park, commercial, short term lending or short term. You've done short term, medium term, residential nurses, or that kind of stuff. The traveling nurses, traveling whoever's. There's different niches like that that we can also cover. But where the money comes from. At the end of the day, if a deal makes sense, and I'll kind of stop at this point, but if a deal makes sense, the money is always there. There's always someone willing to back it. And so you find a good deal, getting the money, and never a problem. Now, you might be in a situation where you find a great deal. I've got a triple out in St. Colin right now. It's a great deal. I don't know that I want to own it, but I wouldn't mind partnering with someone on it because it's a good, whatever. So like, you might find a deal and say, listen, I want to own this deal. Like I'm looking at a self-storage facility. It's going to cost $2.7 million to buy, fix, and do. I don't have the credit, the wherewithal to pull that off on my own, nor do I really want to put everything I would, if I could squeeze it, I'm not sure I'd put everything, all of it on black. So I'm going to get some credit people. I'm going to get some equity partners, and I'm going to end up with like 10% of the deal when it's all said and done. But I'm going to get 10% for really being the brain behind the deal and not being money. So I'm not getting a large piece of it, but it's a large project. It's going to be worth $7 million when we finally sell it off. So, if we have a loan for 3.5, that's 3.5 in profit. I'm getting 10% of that profit. I'm getting $350,000. On sort of a pencil sketch. So, I mean, so I mean, I know that was kind of a 5-minute fly through, but traditionally you're talking banks or asset-based, and asset-based includes hard, private, and the other stuff. That asset-based category is everything that's not a bank.
No, that's interesting.
And I guess the one thing I didn't talk about is subject to assumption of mortgage. So assumption of mortgage is Mr. Seller wants to get out of his current mortgage. He has a 3.2 mortgage from 2002, whatever. Or from whenever. He's got a low mortgage, he's got a great mortgage rate, he's upside down in his property. He's got more debt on the property than he does value, is usually how it is. He just wants to get out. So I can take over the property, not tell the lender. And I've had more subject twos fall apart because the borrower called the lender and said, hey, I'm doing a subject two. And the lender said, no, you're not. Because there's a due on sale clause. We can work around the due on sales. There's a way of working around it. That's a whole different conversation. But or there's assumption of mortgage, which is literally, hi, Mr. Lender, meet Jane. Jane would like to take over my mortgage. Jane gets to apply. Jane gets to give her DNA and da-da-da. Okay, fine. Problem with assumptions is if there's a 3.2 mortgage and the current rate is 7.5, how motivated will the lender be to let you assume the mortgage? And most mortgages written after the fall of 2008 are not assumable. So a lot of people do subject to, and they just the game begins there. And that's another category. If you find a seller that's in over their head or that has a large amount of debt, so they may have equity, they may or not have equity. That's kind of irrelevant. but they have a sweet mortgage worth taking over. Let's say the place is worth 120 and they have $100,000 mortgage at, whatever interest rate's interesting. I'll go and say, yeah, I'll give you 20, on closing, I'll give you 20 grand. You'll give me the deed. I'll take over your payments. We don't say damn shit to the bank. And there's loopholes and things. There's paperwork to jump through, but basically that's it. There's also master leases. I think I might take over this building in State College on a master lease, which says, okay, Mr. Seller, I'm not changing title. I'm not doing any of that crap. I'm just taking control of your property. And at some later time, I'll give you money for it. Or maybe I'll give you money. I mean, when the money comes out, can obviously everything's negotiable. And that's what a lot of people do with me is they'll call me up and say, here's the deal. What are the different strategies for it? I work out a consulting fee on a per deal basis or per whatever basis. So there's, I mean, without going too deep, there's sort of a lot of different ways to play it.
No, that sounds good.
And really, I mean, given the fact that you now have freedom because you have some level of income, and you don't really have a job to go to, which is sad, but whatever. You have some level of income and you don't have a job, so I'll actually just send you the Asset Mastermind link from today. So, I got that. Sorry. So basically, so wholesaling and marketing different services that I offer, like helping me, marketing or whatever, wholesaling and other kinds of real estate marketing, lending, whatever, becoming a broker for that, becoming a referral partner for that. You don't make a lot as a referral partner because that's why I'm getting my broker thing set up by the first of the year. Because as Joe Scarice, who's a lender that I do his podcast every week, and he's like the guru of everything asset based. He's like, Steve, how much time are you really saving me if you're having them fill out a 10-question form and then you're sending me the form? You really haven't, you've given me a name and number, basically, a little bit more than a name and number. He's like, now, if you actually white label for me and you actually do the front end and all I'm doing is the underwriting, now I can start paying you money. But basically, it's a sort of easy and an easy walk-in, an easy kind of walk-in. Wholesaling is a great place to walk into, and wholesaling doesn't have to be what most of my wholesale partners do, at least initially. I call it the doctor model. When doctors, are doing their, I don't know if it's residency or internship, or whichever one comes first. They're in the operating room watching the doctor cut the knee open. A few operations later, the doctor says, okay, well, you're ready. You cut the knee open. I'll watch you. And then a few operations later, the person's okay to fly the operation on their own. Well, that's how my wholesaling training works. After we go through all the actual lesson plan parts of it. But even if you just bring me a deal, as soon as you get that seller interested in having a conversation, you call me. We're on the conversation. You're taking the notes. I'm going through the questions. We hang up, we analyze the property, we call them back, we go through that other, the really offer side of the spiel with it. And then eventually you're able to do that initial call yourself. You're able to do some of the preliminary stuff yourself. You're able to take the next step yourself, and the next step, and the next step, and the next step. So that's what I bring in my classes. So
No, I'm good. This has been really helpful.
okay, all right. So let me, I guess, think about it, and we'll get back in touch in a couple of days, and we'll see where we're at.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.